Story, Transmigrated into the daughter of the evil woman. Summary, I am allergic to Meng Po soup. I drank 3 bowls but still remember my previous life. Meng Po's face was black. I was the last ghost. If she cooked another bowl she would have to work overtime. We looked at each other. She lowered her head to clean up. I ran away. Oh my! Bringing back the memories of reincarnation. Great! It's just that I was too excited. When I jumped into the reincarnation spring I forgot to look at the sign. I transmigrated into the newborn daughter of the evil woman. Before I could even cry, I was picked up and my legs were spread apart. It's a girl. The maid beside me held a white cloth to cover my mouth, sighing, "Oh, what a pity, I died young." I, still in diapers, had to display the peak acting skills of my life. I gradually stopped struggling. The maid in charge of the examination did not doubt that a newborn baby could hold its breath. She reached out to check my breath, then wrapped me in white cloth, carried me outside, and threw me into the cemetery. I was covered by a white cloth, unable to see anything, which amplified my hearing to the maximum. The rustling sound mixed with the howling wind, like a wandering ghost. I cried out. After a long time, a hand lifted the white cloth from my face. I was saved. The next time I woke up, I was on a bumpy carriage. The maid opened my diaper and said to a beautiful and dignified lady, "It's the young lady." The beauty sighed softly. "She's in the cemetery for so long and hasn't died yet. It seems like her fate has not ended. Madam, she is the daughter of Princess Ronghua. If we keep her and that person finds out, we won't be able to bear it." Princess Ronghua? My heart was pounding. Why does it sound like the name of the #1 evil female supporting character in the romance novel I read? Before my sudden death, I was reading a novel, The Righteous Daughter of Khan Xie. An ancient Mary Sue novel. The general content is about Bui Khan Xie, the daughter of a general of the Dai Kai dynasty, innocent and pure, always patient in the face of the harm of her stepmother and half-sister. After accidentally discovering that her mother was murdered, she wiped away her tears, exposed the plot of her stepmother and half-sister, and avenged her mother. At the same time, she and the crown prince experienced a love affair. Before that, the two of them had to go through the tragic love story of "You love me, I love her, you don't love me, I love you, you love him, you listen to me explain, I don't listen, you want to listen, I don't listen." During that time, she attracted countless male supporting characters. Crazy princes, elegant princes, generous merchants, handsome imperial physicians, young generals, deep-minded deputy. There were even a few girls. As for me, I became the #1 evil female supporting character in the early stages, the daughter of Princess Vin Hoa. Why #1? Because she wanted to compete with the female lead for the male lead. Why the early stages? Because she died quite early, in the first half of the novel. My mind was full of the novel's content. I didn't notice that I was transferred to another place. The beautiful woman handed me over to an old lady with heavy makeup. "You take good care of her, remember, she is not allowed to receive guests." Receive guests? What, receive guests? Madam, you're joking, who in our brothel doesn't receive guests? The beautiful woman threw out a heavy bag. His tone immediately changed. Of course, there are exceptions. My mind was full of the novel's content. I didn't notice that I was transferred to another place. The beautiful woman handed me over to an old lady with heavy makeup. "You take good care of her, remember, she is not allowed to receive guests." Receive guests? What, receive guests? Madam, you're joking, who in our brothel doesn't receive guests? The beautiful woman threw out a heavy bag. His tone immediately changed. Of course, there are exceptions. In order to avoid having to entertain guests in the future, I began to show my cleverness, and I worked even harder. Thanks to the 9 years of compulsory education in mathematics, I pushed the teacher out of the accounting position. It wasn't that I was very good at calculating, but that I didn't need money, and I could do other things. The madam's attitude towards me was a little better. Most of the sisters in the courtyard treated me well. In their free time, they taught me how to tie my hair, how to play the pipa, how to put on makeup, how to please men. They taught me everything they knew. In the 36th year of Jingyu, on New Year's Eve, I celebrated my 10th birthday. Half a month later, Mingyue Tower had another young lady, a full moon. Her father was the Shaoqing of the Dali Temple, who was involved in a treason case, sentenced to exile, and her family became courtesans. I suddenly understood. It turned out that that night, the entire city was under curfew, and even Mingyue Tower was closed to visitors, because of the Ling Wang treason case in the book. This was also the end of the novel. Ling Wang colluded with the Xiongnu, initiating a coup. The novel wrote that on that day, the entire imperial palace was submerged in a sea of blood. Corpses were everywhere. Some civil officials banged their heads to commit suicide, some guards had half their heads cut off, and countless eunuchs and maids died under the blades of chaos. Blood flowed like a river, overflowing from the palace gate, dyeing half of Chang'an city red. That day, the sky of Chang'an was also dyed red. The border was also not peaceful. King Lang handed over the defense map in exchange for troops for the coup. But he still lost the game in the end. The crown prince led troops back from Shu, ending the chaos. After quelling the chaos, the late emperor executed King Lang, exterminated his maternal Song family, and imprisoned the two remaining princes. A month later, the crown prince ascended the throne, dissolved the harem, and made Bui Khan the empress. The emperor and empress were in harmony, leaving behind the anecdote of one life, one world, one twin in history. The story ended here. The newly arrived young lady did not eat or drink, just lying on the bed. The elder sisters in the building took turns to advise her, but she remained indifferent. 3 days later, I lost my patience. She ordered us to carry her into the Black House tonight. I knew what was waiting for her. The newly arrived girls were stubborn. If they did not listen, they were all thrown into the Black House. Even for a single coin, they had to entertain guests all night. There was once a girl who entertained 17 people in one night. The next day when she was carried out, her lower body was already ulcerated. The guests coming and going were all the most vulgar and despicable people in this imperial city, porters, old men who poured bedpans at night, there were even beggars. The madam named that place Shamay. She once boasted to us, this method was her idea. No matter how stubborn the girl was, she would not last one night. Their spines would be broken, their self-esteem crushed, they would no longer dare to be arrogant. That weak young lady from a noble family, after leaving the dark house, banged her head against the wall and committed suicide. The madam was angry and cursed. This was a courtesan. If she died without a clear cause, she would also be punished. I secretly told Hong Ling she would not die. Hong Ling was surprised. Why? After failing to commit suicide, it is very difficult to have the courage to commit suicide again. Moreover, she did not want to die at first. From the prison to the brothel and then to receiving guests, she had spent half a month, but she did not commit suicide. She wanted to live, but she just couldn't think it through. Today it was my turn to deliver food. As soon as I entered the door, I poured myself tea. You know how to read? The young lady from a noble family moved on the bed. She turned her head to look at me, and nodded. Then do you know how to write poetry? Very few of the sisters in the building are literate. If you know how to write poetry, maybe you can become a beauty queen. She laughed miserably. Beauty queen. Beauty queen, aren't they all the same? 1,000 people have tasted your rosy lips, a broken toy under men's bodies. I patted her on the shoulder. Think about it differently. 1,000 people have tasted your rosy lips, but you can still play with those men in the palm of your hand. Enjoy the sight of them fighting for your affection. She turned her head. stared at me, and after a long while, she opened her mouth. How old were you when you were sold here? You were thrown here from birth. She moved her lips, but in the end, she couldn't say anything. I had no choice, the sisters in the building had no choice either, but then don't we live anymore? Why? I gave her food, then left the room. Before leaving, I told her, I have no choice, but I still want to live a little better. After that day, the young lady of the boudoir started eating, she gradually recovered. She said her name was Shui Huang. Everyone in the building called her Miss Huang. 10 days later, she received guests again. No, it should be said that it was the first time she received guests. The first time, without medicine, she entered the guest room by herself. That morning, I boiled water to bathe her. She sat in the bathtub, vigorously rubbing the red marks on her body, tears falling into the tub. My father taught me that people must be polite and upright. He taught me that girls must respect themselves. My mother and younger sister bit their tongues and committed suicide in prison. They told me to follow suit. They said that death was better than being a prostitute. But I backed down. I didn't dare to die. I'm sorry to my father. I stood behind her, interrupting her. One must live first before talking about etiquette and shame. Shuiing. S cry was stuck in her throat. I knew it was her lament, her accusation of fate. If she had never seen the light, perhaps she could endure the darkness, just like us in this brothel. But she was once a proud daughter of heaven, once a bright pearl. She lived in the light, was taught the 3 bonds and 5 constants, etiquette and filial piety. One morning she fell from the clouds, was imprisoned in the darkness, her whole body was dirty. If she wanted to live, she had to do the things that they despised the most before. She couldn't accept it, but had no choice but to compromise. She was torn between the teachings of the past, the 3 obediences and 4 virtues of the library, and also by her pride from the past. I gently hugged her and sighed, dying is the easiest thing, living is the hardest, but how many living beings have an easy life? Should we not live because of that? We must live, because living gives us hope of change, even if it is just a precarious life. Compared to life and death, using beauty to serve others is nothing. Tiet Huyen Mi quickly integrated into the life of the brothel. When she had free time, she would teach us how to read and write. The sisters in the brothel all came, and Hong Lang's sister also came. She said she wanted to learn how to write her name. When I was 11 years old, a prince used 1,000 taels of gold to redeem the beauty queen. She was overjoyed and said, "Goodbye," to us. Everyone said that she had suffered enough to enjoy the good things she had done. She would enjoy happiness from now on. Even though she was just a concubine, she had escaped the filth. Only the madam scolded her for being stupid. What have I never seen before? How could I be charmed by a toy like you? Just wait and see, what happiness will you enjoy? It's just a luxurious toy. Sister Luke Y whispered to me, the mama is jealous. That same year, winter, the emperor passed away, the crown prince succeeded to the throne, and the era name was changed to Tien Nguyen. The novel finally came to an end. The coronation ceremony lasted for 5 days, the whole country celebrated, and Kin Noyet Lao also had a rare break. I joined the crowd on the street, listening to the rites official read the coronation decree of the empress. In the middle of a warm winter day, I shivered all over. Bui Min Chao. The empress, not Bui Con Ca. I staggered back to the Jinghua Tower and locked myself in my room. I tried to recall every detail of the plot. But after more than 10 years, those memories had become vague. I asked Huang. Did she know Bui Min Chao? Bui Min Chao? It's normal, she was overshadowed by her older sister, I don't have any deep impressions. But she was lucky, who would have thought that in the end she would be the Tan Vong who ascended the throne? I glared, my voice shrill, Tan Vong? The male supporting character was so weak in the novel? The male supporting character didn't even have any attributes. I stammered and asked, dang, ascending the throne isn't the crown prince? Isn't the Tan Vong the crown prince? Huang looked at me in confusion, somewhat uncertainly asking, you mean, is it the Tian crown prince? Bui Khan Xie's son-in-law? He died from falling off a horse in the spring of the 36th year of Kinhu, don't you know? In the spring of the 36th year of Jingyu, I had a high fever for 10 days without stopping, and had to recuperate in Sister Hongling's small courtyard for a whole month, almost completely isolated from the outside world. When I came out, everything had calmed down. After all, that crown prince was too far away from us. Perhaps there were people among the guests who were interested, but I hadn't received any guests yet, so there was no way to know. The ladies in the building wouldn't intentionally gossip about this matter when they were free. We were more concerned about how to save money, which guests were easy to serve. Even the wrinkles on our faces made us more worried than the death of a crown prince. I used to think that the plot couldn't be changed, and every day I was only worried about survival. But now, the plot had changed. The male lead was dead, and the female lead had disappeared without a trace. Could I escape this fate? At the age of 13, under Huang's guidance, I learned how to recite poems and write prose, and my reputation began to rise. I practiced music, chess, calligraphy, and painting day and night. Sister Louis asked me if I wanted to be a beauty queen. I told her that I wanted to go home. Sister Louis looked at me with pity when she heard that. Because, the madam always said that I was an abandoned child. Nonsense, I had a home. I just lost my way. I intend to cultivate my own industry. Taking advantage of the environment I live in, brothels. I want to build a great intelligence center. I don't dare to attract too many people, not everyone is willing, nor is everyone suitable. I gave Winnie a notebook, telling her to write down what the customers said in bed. I didn't expect that the first piece of intelligence I received was the news that Miss Hua had passed away. After being bought by that prince, less than a year later she was transferred to a general's mansion. That general's wife was a notoriously jealous woman. Miss Hua was tortured to death by her. Her body was thrown into a cemetery. I, Huang, Louis, and Miss Hongling searched the cemetery for 3 days, and finally found Miss Hua's swollen body. The madam was stingy but didn't chase us away. She tacitly agreed to let us leave the body in the backyard for the funeral. The ladies in the building all contributed money, and we bought the most expensive coffin for Miss Hoa. The stingy madam also contributed money. I really like Miss Flower. She is very beautiful, very gentle. I have never seen her raise her voice to anyone. She treats everyone kindly. Her embroidery skills are very good. She once said that when she saves enough money to redeem herself, she will become an embroiderer. Many of my clothes were made by her, each one is of the highest quality. The day she was redeemed, I asked her if she would no longer be an embroiderer. She smiled and said to me, "Little fish, no one will use my embroidery. No matter how beautiful it is, I am still a prostitute." She both laughed and cried. My beautiful sister, she is so smart, how could she not know that once she becomes a concubine, she will be at her own mercy? Even if she is the crown prince's concubine, so what? In this world, she is nothing more than a toy transformed into a luxurious toy. Ever since Miss Flower left, Sister Luke Y's mood has not been good. She has been worried about her future. There's nothing to worry about, I comforted her. There's probably nothing more miserable than a prostitute. Sister Luke Y cried even harder. She said she missed her mother. If my mother was still alive, I wouldn't have been sold here. Sister Luke Y is a few years older than me, and there is only one older brother left in the family. She was sold here by her sister-in-law when she was 13. When she first arrived, she was so skinny that she was nothing but skin and bones, which made her big eyes even more terrifying. The madam used that as an excuse to successfully squeeze the price, and with just a tael of silver, she bought Sister Luke Y's entire life. The first day she arrived, she ate 3 steamed buns in a row and drank half a bucket of water. Her stomach was so swollen that it scared Sister Hongling to sleep all night. After that, even though she had eaten her fill, she still couldn't get rid of her gluttony. Every time the madam got drunk, she would say to us, "There are no good men. They are all untrustworthy. You must remember, in this profession, if you want to live a peaceful life, you must not be tempted by men." Sister Louis treasured her life very much. She copied this saying down, stuck it in her room, and read it every day. In the 4th year of Tianyuan, there was a great drought in the southwest. The land was barren. The emperor opened the granary to provide relief. A month later, the news of the drought was overshadowed by the new shops opening in the city. Jingyue Tower did not change much. We were in the capital. The drought in the southwest was too far away from us. People starved to death everywhere. The scene of exchanging children for food was just a few lines on paper, far from the nobles in the imperial city. The only impression I had of the drought in the southwest was Shui. He was a refugee who came here. His uncle, the old man who cleaned dung at night at Jingyu Lu, had begged the madam for several days, but she still refused to hire Shui. Not for any other reason, but because Shui was too skinny, he could fall over in the wind. The madam was afraid that if he was hired, he wouldn't be able to do the job. Shui was leaning against the back door. His clothes were ill-fitting and loose, his wrists were exposed, only skin and bones. It was terrifying. He looked at me, his cheeks sunken, his eyes empty. In front of him was his uncle, the old man with white hair who had abandoned his dignity, bowed and begged the madam. "How many times have I told you, is my place a charity? He's so skinny, even serving tables scares away customers." The madam lost her patience and chased him out. At the end of the month, I held the money and went to the madam who was playing cards. "We are short of people, especially the waiters in the front. They are busy all day long. You just find a few people to try out first. Go, don't bother me listening to the cards." Shui just like that entered Jingyu Lu's sister Hongling arranged for him to do chores in the backyard, let him gain weight before going to the front to wait tables. Half a month later, the madam discovered Shui in the backyard. She was about to get angry, but I spoke first. "The first month he works, his wages will be cut in half. He only needs to be provided with food and lodging." Finally, the madam agreed. A month later, Shui started to gain weight, and I was surprised to find that he was quite handsome. I told him to follow the guard in the building to learn martial arts. Knowing many trades doesn't mean you won't be unemployed. When I have free time, I will take him to the abandoned Tan Hong temple in the suburbs. There are many beggar children there, most of them are young, and cannot compete for a place to stay in the city. They can only come to the suburbs to stay. I will bring them food. Sometimes I will teach them common words, teach them the multiplication table. At the same time, I will also look for someone to send a message to me. At first, Shui and I picked a few beggar children to be in charge of delivering messages. Later, when we had earned some money, we opened a tea shop. The manager was a beggar child we rescued, named Shuyan Tuesday. He had been a vagrant since he was young, and was only 12 years old now. He was so smart that I admired him, very suitable for selling messages. In the 6th year of Tianyuan, Shui left Jingyue Tower. We used the money from selling information to open a tea shop. He recruited a group of people, ostensibly transporting goods, but secretly protecting our tea shop. Our business became more and more prosperous. The 7th year of Tianyuan, nothing important happened, just that I turned 17 and started receiving guests. And my intelligence center was also formed. Inside, there was me, Huang. And elder sister Lu Yi gathering information. Outside, there was Shui. Contacting buyers and sellers of information. It was very tiring, but I also earned quite a bit of money. During the reception, I played a piece of Phoenix Seeking a Phoenix, marking my name. My price skyrocketed because of that. The madam laughed until her eyes narrowed. Hongling cried until her eyes were swollen. Before the reception, she gave all her savings to the madam, begging her not to force me to entertain guests. Huang and Louis did the same, both of them used up all their capital. Many of the older sisters in the brothels who had seen me grow up also contributed money. From the moment I set foot in the brothel, I never thought about a safe retreat. I told myself, I am a modern woman, how can I entertain guests? I don't know which cat bites which mouse. I cried like a storm. Madam did not agree. She scolded us, saying that my price had increased to 5,000 taels of silver, and told us not to stop her from making money. Hongling still did not give up, continuing to run around for me. My tears were about to fall again. Didn't my elder sister say before that I should accept my fate? At night, the madam helped me with my hair. Do you hate me? I shook my head. Although she was pragmatic, clever, stingy, and tough, forcing many elder sisters to entertain guests. However, she treated us well. She did not chase away the older elder sisters whose beauty had faded, but kept them in the building, doing odd jobs, not worrying about food and clothing. She also did not share too much. As long as the elder sisters saved enough money to redeem themselves, she would immediately release them. Although she always scolded the elder sisters for being daydreamers, if the elder sisters who had redeemed themselves did not live well and wanted to return, she would still grumble and welcome them back. The madam asked again, "Do you blame me?" I was silent for a long time, then slowly nodded. Her hand trembled, pulling my hair hard. But her tears fell first. In the 8th year of Tianyuan, winter, the plum tree in the yard that had not bloomed for several years suddenly bloomed. Louis was very happy, it was planted by her own hands. Yi Xiu Shuang held an embroidery competition. Louis begged me to go with her. Her embroidery skills were personally taught by the Huakue elder sister, and had reached a peak that no one could match. The owner of Yi Xiu Shuang refused to accept. He said that this was a serious competition, and the participants were all good girls. I was so angry that I turned his stall upside down. We didn't steal, we didn't rob, and we didn't lack a single coin of tax from the imperial city. The shop owner still refused to accept. He said, "Miss, don't make things difficult for me. If you participate and offend those ladies, my shop will be ruined." Louis pulled me away. At the corner of the street, the son of the fabric shop owner stopped us. He was my customer. He told us to give him the embroidery, and he would go home and convince his father. Louis happily handed over the embroidery, his eyes shining. 3 days later, the embroidery competition results were announced. Louis woke up early to put on her makeup. It was the end of the month, and I had a bunch of messy books that I hadn't finished calculating, so I couldn't go. Huang went with her. She skipped out the door as she walked, almost breaking the vase. The madam scolded her, "Damn girl, don't be too happy too soon. You might not win any prizes." Although she said that, she still let Louis rest last night, so she could sleep early so she would be in better spirits today. Louis walked out with a smile, but was carried back. She was almost beaten to death. When I heard the news, I was still calculating the accounts. The abacus fell to the ground. I ran to Lu Yi's room. Hongling and Huang had already arrived. Huang S hair was messy, and there were blood stains on her face. Louis was curled up on the bed, her light blue shirt was stained red, blood flowed in streams, densely covering Louis's small and soft body. She muttered, "I didn't steal it, I embroidered it." "What happened?" "Huang told me." They went to Yishou Shuang, and discovered that Louis's embroidery was indeed the first prize, but it wasn't Louis's name. The embroidery, Spring River Flowers and Moon Night, had turned out to be that of a police officer's daughter. That girl was holding the award on the stage, laughing and chatting happily with others. Huang was angry and exposed it on the spot. The scene was chaotic. The son of the fabric shop owner dragged them away. He said that he could not convince his father, and was about to return the embroidery when the policeman came to the door and saw him. The policeman said that his daughter was about to get married, and if she was known for her embroidery skills, she would be more likely to be respected by the groom's family. The fabric shop owner immediately gave the embroidery to the policeman, and he did not have time to stop him. The shop owner's son kept apologizing, saying that he would give them an explanation. They had no choice but to return first. On the way back, a group of thugs stopped them. They dragged Lu Kuai out into the street, tore her clothes, beat her and scolded her for being a thief, stealing an embroidery from a good girl and pretending to be her own. The people around them surrounded them, pointing and gossiping. The eyes and words of each person were more painful than the fists that landed on them. "No, you're lying. I embroidered it, I embroidered it." The people around looked at Lu Kuai crazily, becoming even more excited. They cursed, despised, and started throwing things at Lu Kuai. Huang and the son of the fabric shop owner risked their lives to bring Lu Kuai back. Louis had a high fever. We took turns taking care of her day and night. 3 days later, when she woke up, the first thing she said was, "I'm not lying, that's my embroidery." Hong Ling burst into tears when she heard that. She held Louis's hand. "Be good, I know, it was you who embroidered it." Louis turned her head to look at her, her tears soaking her pillow. That official often bullied the common people, and so did his daughter. Her bad reputation spread 10 miles, how could people not know how skilled her embroidery was? How could those people watching the excitement not know that Louis was wronged? But so what? They only wanted to see a good show, so whether it was Louis's reputation or life, it didn't matter. Just because, we were prostitutes. We were born vixens, born low-class, unworthy. But no one had ever given us a choice. Louis's face was left with a long scar, and she could no longer receive guests. The doctor said that this scar could not be removed. The madam scolded and cursed, but did not chase Louis away, letting her follow Hong Ling to do odd jobs. The normally lively Louis suddenly became quiet. She often sat absent-mindedly in the dark room, not saying a word. I comforted her, "The scar will gradually fade." Louis smiled and nodded, but was still depressed. Huang said the problem in Louis's heart was not her appearance, nor was it money. I told stories to Louis for several days, to cheer her up. Louis still looked like she had lost her soul. "Let me tell you a dream," I told her. She tilted her head, obediently looking at me. "I once dreamed that 1,000 years from now, women could also become officials." I recalled my hometown in my memory, and the more I told her, the more excited I became. There was a great man who said that women could also shoulder half of the sky. He said that men and women were equal. He encouraged women to read books, encouraged women to leave their homes and become officials. He made laws that men could only have one wife, even emperors were no exception. Louis gently asked me, "What about the emperor?" I leaned close to her ear, "Same. In my dream, there were no emperors, princes, generals, how could there be anything like that?" Lu Kuai chuckled, your dream is so strange, is it heaven? Free education, everyone can go to school, there's even a government office to protect women and children. I also laughed, so my hometown is heaven. The next day, Louis begged me to continue telling her about that dream. I racked my brain, telling her many stories about great people, how they overcame difficulties, defeated enemies, ruled the country. Louis listened enthusiastically, but she still felt it was not enough. I had no choice but to ask her what she wanted to hear. She said, "What does your dream school look like? How does the teacher teach?" I recalled my student days. In my dream, I was in the South. The buildings in the school were all 6 or 7 stories high, each building had a long corridor, the sunset in the afternoon shone down on the corridor, it was the most beautiful, like a painting. There was also an oval track in the school. That was where the students did their exercises. There was also a cafeteria. There were a lot of students. Every time we had lunch, we had to race. If we were late, we had to line up very long. Louis asked, "How long was it?" "As long as the line to buy Rui cakes." I compared a bit, nodded. "Sometimes when I'm late, it's even longer than that." "Then the food in the cafeteria must be delicious." Louis's face looked longing. I nodded, swallowing my saliva. I've never tasted that flavor again. Louis propped his chin up, staring at me, afraid of missing any gesture. I became more and more comfortable, telling the story with both voice and body, telling everything I could remember. After telling, my throat was dry. Louis softly said, "That's great." I patted her head. In my dream, that school had its own cooking class, and there was also an embroidery school. "Your embroidery skills are so good, the master will definitely like you." "No, maybe you're the master." Louis's face was dark. She asked me, "Can a prostitute also become a master?" I told her, "In my dream, there are no brothels, no one can force us to sell our bodies, not even our relatives. If we sell our children, we will be imprisoned. The Women and Children Protection Office will protect those girls, send them to school. If it were in my dream, you and Sister Huakhui could both be teachers, teach people to embroider, become masters." Louis seemed to have recovered. She started to laugh and talk with us. It's just that sometimes, seeing her exaggerated laughter, I still felt startled. Huanger, Hongling, and I kept watch day and night, afraid that she would think of something stupid. But we couldn't stop someone who wanted to die. She took advantage of the night when the sisters were entertaining guests, told Hongling to go out, bring a basket of wine, and burn down that police officer's house. There were no casualties, only that the police officer's daughter, when she ran out, was injured in the face by Louis. The wound was so deep that she could see the bone. She laughed loudly and stood still on the spot, being escorted into prison by the authorities. In the government office, she confessed her crime. After being sentenced, she shouted, "I didn't lie. She stole my embroidery. They lied." After saying that, she banged her head and committed suicide right there in the government office. Louis once said that her mother once told her that in the government office, there was a great master named Qing Tian who would clear the name of the wronged person. The people all believed what he said in court. My Lukwai died in spring, the fresh spring. In the next life, I want to live a righteous human life. These were the last words she left behind. My Lukwai was gone, the girl who always protected me like an older sister was gone. Only I was left, holding a chest of memories of my hometown, not knowing who to tell. In the morgue, Louis's body was covered with a white cloth. I carried her, it was too light, I carried her back to Yaoyulu. Louis was so young. She was lively and cheerful, a comedian of the brothel. She was very good at embroidery, the fish she embroidered looked so real. She said, she was saving money, later on she would buy a big house to put her mother's tablet in. She said she wanted to live with us in our yard, until she was old. "Why did you leave?" I can't stand this world anymore. Just because we are prostitutes, just because we are ants, anyone can step on our spines. Anyone out there can bully us at will. Just because we are not decent people. But we just want to live. Who gave us the choice? Everything we have learned, literature, truth, equations. All of it swirls chaotically in my head, converging into an angry scream, wanting to break the space, break the confinement. But it is pulled back. The bonds of feudal etiquette wrap around us, not seeing the sunlight. Madame was waiting for us in the backyard, her makeup was smudged with tears. Louis and I were the youngest in the brothel. Hong Ling said that Madame treated us like daughters, although I didn't see it. That night, I stayed up to watch over Louis. I don't know when Madame arrived. She was drunk, and put a tail of silver in Louis's coffin. She suddenly cried and laughed. I told you before, falling in love with a man is our fate. Louis remembered it well, he copied it down, posted it in his room, and admonished himself every day. He's already like this, why did he still leave? You fool, if someone falsely accuses you of eating his food, don't cut open your stomach to prove your innocence, you should gouge out his eyes and swallow them, let him stay in your stomach, and see clearly. I looked at the madam. She collapsed on Louis's coffin, sobbing, seemingly drunk, yet seemingly sober. I asked the madam, that night, the madam stopped me and asked, that year you were hosting the guest ceremony. Someone told me, you must let me host the guests, otherwise my Yaoyu tower will be leveled. I also thought about telling you the truth, but those people hold the royal family's card, we can't fight them. I thought, I will be the bad guy and hide everything. As long as you don't know anything, maybe I can still protect you all. I interrupted her, what will be the result? We are all lowly to the mortal world, will they give us a way to live? Louis's death was also because of them? The madam was silent for a long time, then slowly said, I don't know. It's just that afterwards, we went to look for the scoundrel that Louis met that day, but we couldn't find anyone. Huang drew a portrait of one of them, and that person looked very similar to the one who threatened me to let you entertain guests. My mind returned to the day I first entertained guests. That was the darkest day in my 2 lives, I didn't want to remember it. I thought I was just unlucky, meeting that pervert Lin Huaijiang. That night, Shui also came to bid on me. Wearing his most neat clothes, he opened his mouth and bid all his assets, including the money we had sold intelligence for over the years. He once said it was money he had saved for his wedding. Shui was eliminated from the start, and someone kept raising the price. My price exceeded 5,000 taels. At that time, I comforted myself, feeling that I was worth something, almost surpassing the price of a beauty queen. In the end, I was bought for 6,000 taels. The person who bought me was the eldest son of Lin Shoufu, Lin Huaijiang, a pervert who brought his bad friends into the room with him. That night, he tortured me until I fainted, and I had to recuperate for a whole month. After that, Lin Huaijiang kept me for a high price for several months. From then on, he never touched me again, he said I was dirty. He only liked to drink tea at brothels, then ordered me to masturbate, and even brought people to watch. He also treated me like a reward, giving it to his hunting dogs. I was like an animal, being criticized by others, using my embarrassed appearance to entertain others. Lin Huaijiang liked seeing my humiliated expression the most. I hated not being able to eat him, but had to bow my head, flatter him, and pretend to be infatuated with him. Working as a child laborer in a brothel, I didn't cry. Serving others with my beauty, I also didn't cry. Being tortured by Lam Huaijiang, I only shed tears. I always thought that I was just unlucky, had bad fate. But now, someone told me that all my suffering was caused by humans. I didn't do anything, just because of my background, they treated me like a toy in the palm of their hands. If they wanted to, they would wave their hands, give a few orders, ruin my life, trample on my self-esteem, force my loved ones to die. This was the first time I had faced this world so directly. Facing the tyranny, it pressed down on me, crushed my spine, forced my family to fall apart. The swollen corpse of the beauty queen, Luke Y's blood-stained clothes, the miserable scream before death, and me with no self-respect left at Lam Huaizhong's feet. Each scene tormented me. I realized, I was no longer an outsider to the story, I had become an insider. Shui sent people to follow that police officer day and night, throwing dirty things into his house. Whenever his family went out, they were robbed and beaten. We were looking for all the scoundrels in Xiaoshanjia, for no other reason. They were fast, and familiar with the capital, they had never lost a battle. Half a month later, that police officer confessed. He said he was only paid to do the job. I asked who ordered him, but he gritted his teeth and refused to say. Ta soi guang, nan ra min ko the de fam sai lam, and hung nam qua. Ta siu gi min. I hid it very well, but perhaps, I was exposed from the start. A daughter takes after her mother, it seems natural. Although I have never met Princess Vin Hoa, how could anyone in the capital not have met her? Every unreasonable point has an explanation. The enemy came knocking at my back door when I grew up, the unfamiliar faces in the brothel on the day of the auction. The many people who came to buy me for the night. Their eyes always carried scrutiny and ridicule. I have a portrait of Princess Ronghua, 7 parts like me. The portrait was given to me by Lin Huaijiang. He lazily sat down, started making tea, his teacup, his tea set, all brought by himself. His stupid brain and developed limbs, putting on airs. One day I will throw him into the pigsty. You are 5 parts like Princess Ronghua from back then. Of course you don't have that royal aura, all reeks of cheap makeup. We only came to watch for fun, if we touch you we will feel dirty. But you have to thank me, that night I deliberately raised the price for you, you made a fortune.
Ha! 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 Ha!
After a few months, you won't be worth anything anymore. Humph, just for fun. Only a fool like you would be taken advantage of without knowing it. After receiving the portrait, I roughly guessed 7 or 8 parts, the person behind it was testing me. Testing to see if I was really the descendant of Princess Vin Hoa, or if I simply looked alike. Therefore, they incited perverts like Lam Huaizhong to humiliate me. That day, Luke Y and I went to deliver the embroidery. They thought it was my embroidery, so they ordered the police to swap it, and contacted the hooligans, trampling on my self-respect. Although Lam Huaizhong is a pervert, his mind is not quick. I tricked him a few times, and he confessed that he saw the portrait of Princess Vin Hoa at Bui Hian Chi's place. I have also heard of Bui Hian Chi. He is the nephew of the current queen, and also a member of Bui Con Cie's Bui family. It is reasonable for them to play with me. Then it was only natural that I should play with them again. Madame was sick. After Louis left, her health was not good. In the spring, she caught a cold and fell ill. She weakly leaned on the bed, pointing at her territory, the Yaoyu Tower. After that, her illness became worse. She was in a coma all day, and when she woke up from time to time, she would only look at the sky outside the window, her expression gentle, something I had never seen before. Only this sky is still the same. These past few months, the business of Yaoyu Lu has been managed by Hongling. She is busy as hell, but she is more energetic than before. I was busy taking care of the madam and didn't pay attention. Shui hasn't been to Yaoyu Lu for a long time. The last time I heard news of him was on the wanted poster from the government. He stole things from the Bui family, and even killed someone, with a reward of 100 taels. I wanted to contact him, but Huang stopped me. Xiao Yu, be careful of the Bui family. Madam could no longer get out of bed. Perhaps the words of a dying person were gentle, and the seriously ill madam became more and more gentle. When I fed her, she often muttered in repentance, "Maybe I will go to hell. In this life, I have harmed so many girls, they will drag me to hell with them." I comforted her, "Those girls probably won't go to hell." Her hands trembled even more. Madam was never a good person in the traditional sense. Shui found me. He hid in a garbage truck and sneaked into Xiaoyu Lu. He hid in Sister Hongling's room to meet me, then threw me a time bomb. Bui Concie is not dead. Bui Hian Chi is her son. She is hiding in a nunnery. Princess Vin Hoa had died a long time ago, died of difficult childbirth. As for me, I was just an orphan taken in by a brothel. The person behind it, regardless of the risk of being exposed, spent so much effort to torture me, must hate Princess Vin Hoa to the bone. With such a deep hatred, other than Bui Concie, I couldn't think of anyone else. I just didn't expect that she would give birth to a son, truly the female lead, the darling of heaven and earth. The main text had a bad ending, but it was still able to open up a side story about silent, patient revenge. It was very dangerous for Tai. To stay at Xiaoyu Lu. Not only was he in danger, but so was Xiaoyu Lu. He gave me a portrait of Bui Concie and was about to leave. He said that this matter was extremely important, afraid of causing an incident, so he came to inform me personally. He said that he was hiding in Xia San Yai, and it wouldn't be easy for the Bui family to catch him. I won't let him go. As long as I stay in Chang'an for one more day, Shui will not be able to escape. What he discovered is enough to make the entire Bui family suffer for eternity. The Bui family will not let him off easily, they would rather kill by mistake than let him go. Mama said, she will take Shui out of the city. She told me to hide Shui in her coffin. That night, when Mama was dying, the older sisters came to say
goodbye
to her one by one. When it was my turn, she held my hand, leaned close to my ear and whispered, "Only by truly becoming a person of this era can you survive. Just, don't forget your name. Don't be like me, forgetting your own name." Mama died on a drizzly spring day. I stood in front of her coffin, holding in my hand several books that she had painstakingly copied over the past few months. From the multiplication table to the poem Goose, 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 everything she could remember, she wrote down. In the end, she didn't tell me her story. I don't know when she crossed over, I don't know what she went through to become the Madam of Tu Noyet Lao, I don't know if she met a companion or a mortal enemy. She carried the story of 2 lives, carried her memories and buried them in the grave, starting her journey back. This was Mama's last wish. She wanted to be buried in her homeland that had been 1,000 years away from her. Chuanzi drove the carriage carrying Mama's coffin out of the city. Inside, there was Shui and 3 books that we had handwritten together. Sister Huang told me that one of her regular customers said that he was about to be promoted and become a Lang Zhong of the Ministry of Justice. He was only made Yuan Wai Lang last year. He shouldn't have been promoted so quickly, unless his superiors were about to have trouble. But a few days ago, I heard him lamenting. He caught a refugee from the southwest and had to stay up all night to interrogate him. The southwest had been suffering from drought for 3 years. Although the emperor had always opened the warehouses to provide relief, the people still gossiped. They said that the 3-year drought was the wrath of heaven, the lament of the late crown prince. Chuanzi had already inquired about the southwest refugees. He said that person had come to the capital to submit a memorial. His hometown had suffered from crop failure for 3 consecutive years, and many people had died. Relief from the imperial court finally arrived, but each person was only given half a bowl of thin porridge, only once a day, enough to survive. He was an old scholar in the village, who could read and write, and he knew that the relief money had been embezzled. Seeing that the elderly in the village were getting fewer and fewer, he went begging all the way to the capital, wanting to submit a memorial to the emperor. Actually, it wasn't just him. He gathered scholars from several neighboring villages, and went to the capital together. It's just that along the way, only he was left. They went to see the district magistrate to demand justice, but were chased out. They wrote letters to their classmates, but they were all blocked. This group of scholars who couldn't even tie a chicken, gritted their teeth, carried their luggage on their backs, walked thousands of miles, and begged all the way to the capital. Many of the regular customers of Xiaoyu had disappeared, but the matter of the Southwest refugees did not cause any waves. Sister Huang told me that this was very normal. In the capital, the wind was bloody and the rain was bloody. If the Southwest refugees were used well, they would be a sharp knife to eliminate political enemies. As for the refugees who died in the fighting, we could only blame their bad luck. I thought of a great gift for Bui Concie. The Bui family had a 100-year foundation in the capital, and many disciples. In the embezzlement of relief aid, the Bui family never directly intervened, but the benefits they gained were not small. Half a month later, the emperor investigated the embezzlement of relief aid, and many disciples of the Bui family were exiled. Everyone praised the emperor for being wise and a rare wise ruler. In the tea house, the storyteller talked endlessly. I went to listen for several days, and the story was really good. I asked Shuyan too, how was that old scholar? He said he was dead, died of illness in prison. The emperor later specially rewarded him. It was just that he had no wife or children, and his parents had also passed away. The money was sent back to his hometown. His hometown was Shitsi Village, Nanzi Township, Fangshan County, Rongqing, Shudi. Fuang. Na. Chin. Wai Noang asked me if I could teach her these words. I asked her, is it from that old scholar? I want to light a lamp for him, and also Fuang Tuctn, Fuang Min Hong. I taught her to practice over and over again. Wai Noang was a refugee with the villagers, both of her parents died along the way, she had a hard time reaching the capital, she lived peacefully for a few months, then the distant relative she relied on also died. Wai Noang wanted to bury him, so she sold herself to Tu Noyet Lao. She practiced on the ground over and over again. She said that paper and ink were too expensive, she had to write correctly the first time. 108. He was usually very respected in the countryside, right? I patted Wai Noang's head. She shook her head, very old-fashioned, arrogant, but even failed the imperial examinations, drank all day long, talked about unfulfilled ambitions, often owed money, and had bad relationships with people. After that, the hometown was in trouble. The imperial scholars, village chiefs, and wealthy people with prospects in the village all left. This hateful old man took on the responsibility, begging to go to the capital to submit a memorial. Before leaving, I asked him, why? Wai Noang suddenly stopped, arousing my curiosity. I began to speculate, could it be, reading books is to speak up about the injustices in the world, or living for the common people, something like that? She shook her head, laughing at herself. He scolded, saying, what are you asking for? In the village there are only a few people who know how to read. If they don't go, who will? Aren't you a little disappointed? They're not very talented, they don't have much ink in their stomachs, and they're also stingy. They're not the kind of great heroes with high morals and prestige in novels. I remembered the political topic from my previous life. Ordinary people can also be heroes. I read an essay to Yin Yang non-stop. Her eyes lit up when she heard it, and she asked me which gentleman's words. I really couldn't remember. Lei Feng. In the spring of the 10th year of Tian Yuan, I disbanded Xiaoyu Lu, and returned the sale papers to the sisters in the building. I used the excuse of the epidemic to send them out of the city one by one. Only Hong Ling and Huang Er remained. Hong Ling said she wouldn't leave me, Huang Er said she was a courtesan and couldn't go anywhere. Pei Xianxi's identity was exposed. A prince in the capital disguised himself and went to the nunnery to worship Buddha, and witnessed Pei Xianxi calling Pei Qingge mother. After just one night, everyone knew that Pei Xianxi was the son left by Crown Prince Shinde. At the same time, news of the Bui family raising private soldiers at the border also reached the emperor's ears. The sky in the capital was about to change. A few days later, Tu Noyet Lao was surrounded on all sides. I finally met Bui Concie, the woman who holds my destiny in her hands. Time seemed to have no effect on Bui Concie. She wore a Taoist robe, her hair was tied up with a wooden hairpin, and her whole person exuded an elegant and otherworldly aura. She looked at me, neither sad nor happy. She understood the principle that villains die because they talk too much, so she resolutely ordered someone to stab me. But she was captured by the soldiers who had been ambushing her. On the 4th day of the 4th month of the 10th year of Tianguin, Bui Hianqi rebelled. A few days later, the empress led the army to quell the rebellion. Bui Hianqi was killed in front of the palace gate, and the emperor was injured by the rebels and died. The empress personally dealt with the Bui family, then, despite opposition, put the little emperor on the throne, and took regency behind the curtain. I cannot win against Bui Concie. Even if I risk everything, it will only be like a moth flying into the fire. It's just that Bui Concie's enemy is not only me, her younger sister, Bui Min Chao, is the first. That year, Crown Prince Tonduk passed away. Bui Concie seduced the emperor. At that time, the emperor had already married her younger sister, Bui Min Chao. Bui Concie lost her position as empress. She could not let her child lose the throne. She gave Bui Min Chao a sterilization drug. When the Bui family found out, there was no way to save them. They were tied to Bui Hianqi's boat. Living her whole life under her older sister's shadow, not even being able to have her own child, how could Bui Min Chao not hate it? As the years passed, she even hated the Bui family for always favoring her older sister. I handed the knife to Bui Min Chao. She accepted it. Perhaps, during the battle for the throne that year, the emperor had promised something to the Bui family, but after more than 10 years, the emperor still did not restore Bui Hianqi's status. The Bui family was anxious. I pierced Bui Hianqi's background, creating a reputation for him among the people. While the empress was in the palace advising, the emperor had murderous thoughts. The disaster of the people in the southwest caused the Bui family to be demoted. The matter of raising private soldiers was exposed. The Bui family had no choice but to rebel. After the rebellion was quelled, the empress, now the empress dowager, allowed me to return to the royal family, saying that I could continue to be a county princess. I asked her, what about the sisters in Yaoyu Tower? They raised me. They can also be rewarded with good fields and gold and silver, whatever they want, and they can also restore their status as good children. My previous wish was to take my sisters and leave Yaoyu Tower together. But what about the sisters in the other towers? What about the other women in other places who are like us, stuck in the mud, those slaves? What will happen to them? I refuse to be a county princess. I ask for a little mercy for the sisters. I beg the Empress Dowager to allow a school to be opened in Xiasanjia, to allow women to enroll. In the 10th year of Tianyuan, I brought with me 10,000 taels of gold and countless jewels and left the capital. I arrived at Shu, which was the home of the madam. I opened the first free school here, and all men and women, young and old, rich and poor, could attend. During the off-season, I went with the teachers and students to the countryside, where there were slaves who had been raised for generations, and I taught them to read, write, and learn mathematics, and mulberry. There were too many people, and I couldn't go to everyone. We implemented the Little Master system, trying to make it possible for everyone who wanted to learn. After that, there were the borders, the lands of the southern man, and all the poor and oppressed places in the world. In the school, there was mathematics, agriculture, engineering, and science. I gave the notebook that the madam left behind to the teachers in the school. Together with their students, they researched ways to refine salt, make glass, improve weaving machines, manufacture gunpowder, and even research steam engines. In their free time, I will tell my students stories about Mr. Duck and Mr. Qua, about freedom and democracy, about the fairy tale of robbing from the rich to give to the poor, about the homeland in my dreams. In this era of cannibalism, I can protect my sisters for a while, but I can't protect them for a lifetime. The only way I can think of is to change this place, turn this place into my homeland from 1,000 years ago. Before I crossed over, I was just a teacher's graduate. All I can do is teach them everything I remember. This is not something that can be done overnight. But I have sown the seeds of fire. I believe that one day, a small spark can ignite into a huge fire. Then one day, the red color of my homeland can flutter across the 9 continents and 4 seas. The 18th year of Tianyuan, winter, the 28th year I came to this world, I died. The emperor found out that my school taught democracy and freedom. He considered it a heretical doctrine, ordered all schools to be closed, and beheaded me and hung my head at the city gate. But it was worth it. My school had spread across the great 9 provinces for 8 years. A small spark was enough to ignite a huge fire. The moment the blade fell, images from the past appeared before my eyes one after another. The beauty queen, Luke Y, the madam. Finally, the image stopped at the first night I worked. Young Hong Lang sat by my bed shedding tears. She said, "Little fish, you must accept your fate." This time, I did not remain silent. I used all my strength, hooked my finger into her hand. "I don't want to." I did not accept my fate. Being born a prostitute, it was not my fault. In this cannibalistic era, I have met too many people. They tried their best, but their spines were crushed by the tyrants. Born as a prostitute, everyone told me to accept my fate. I also tried my best to sympathize with this era. But I had dreamed a dream that lasted for 1,000 years, and could never reconcile with this cannibalistic feudal era. I went from being an outsider observing the story, to being an insider. In order to survive, in order to live uprightly as a human, I used everything I had learned, just wanting to make this place a little more like my homeland that had been 1,000 years away, to fight for thousands and thousands of them to have a way to live. Living like an ant, one must also face the sun.